started and I'm late, or?
No, I haven't started yet.
Sorry.
Alright, I think everybody's all set, right? Alright, so it's 10:07 on Wednesday, March 27th, and I'll call the meeting to order. And we'll have, this is just a regular meeting, so we don't do the silent reflection. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. I'll just wait a second. There we go.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. All right, so this is our second look at the budget, and also to do discussion on the facilities and hub creation for the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe. And before we begin, I just wanted to say just a little something before we start. So over the last number of years and over the last kind of meeting and so on and so forth, there's been comments made that that we need to establish the difference between the requirements of the township as well as the nice-to-have items as well. And I do believe it's very imperative to invest into our township to drive new families and businesses into our community. And our tax rate is lower than some surrounding municipalities, but they also offer a lot more services and infrastructure than what we do in Adelaide Metcalfe. So it's going to become harder and harder to compete. So we need to remain an attractive place to put down roots, and otherwise the bottom line for our municipality it will be hard to sustain ourselves in the future. So our residents expect a certain level of quality of life and basic services, and that's something that we need to keep in mind of when we look at our budget and looking forward to what those requirements are that we need to have in our municipality, and the what I like to say is the nice to have items. So, okay. So moving on, if there's no declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof, we do have one item of correspondence, and it's a recommended reading, and it's from Nick Stockman. It's a letter regarding the 2019 budget. Is there any discussion on this one? Councilor McKinnon?
Yeah, I'll start with
Sorry,
Nick had made some comments on the roadway about to have road improvement project timelines influenced by council members living on or near a certain road should never come into the mix. Well, I've been campaigning every council election since 2007, and that was the one thing, Scotchmere Drive not being township was brought up to me. So I was bringing forward the ratepayers' concerns about not having paved road on there, and I'll continue to do so while I'm on this term of council. And I thought regarding the hub, Nick, you were part of the council that looked at the strategic plan, and council accepted that. And so that was part of the strategic plan, was to look at the hub. So I feel that by doing that, we've allowed the new councillors to look at the strategic plan and decide whether or not we're to proceed with it or not. But that was basically my comments.
Councillor Clark?
So first of all, I'd like to thank Nick for taking the time to submit something. I think that's important that we have ratepayers interested in contributing. I too, I guess when I saw your comment about the roads, I assumed it was directed at me because when I asked the question about Innadale, I disclosed that I live on that road. I don't live on Scotchmere or Walkers, and the only reason I brought it up is because the ratepayers have approached me. Just like I don't live in Kerwood, but you people all heard from me at the last meeting about the cats. My job as an elected official is to bring things forward. And as for the sidewalks, I have taken the opportunity over the last couple of weeks. I've met with the ratepayers on the Pike Side Road, and we've walked the roads. And they don't want everything paved, they just want a safe path. So I don't think when we're looking at sidewalks, we're not undertaking to do the entire township. I've spoken to an individual who's employed with the town of Strathroy, and it would be not a big deal for the shovel to go another 10 feet down the sidewalk there. The jury's still out with me with respect to a hub. I'm not sure I'm sold on that, but I'm still thinking about that. I think your comments for council remuneration are valid. I think it's irrelevant that your neighbor volunteers for nothing. I just came from a 8 o'clock board meeting where I get absolutely nothing, so I take exception to that. And the other thing is, with respect to possibly doing accommodation here in an elevator, after the last budget meeting, Mike and I went downstairs, and I can fix your problem for probably $20,000. The downstairs is accessible, this is accessible. There's nothing to say we couldn't put the council chambers downstairs and turn this into office space up here and save $200,000. So, but once again, thank you for bringing it forward, and I think we all have different opinions, and that's what makes the world tick. If we all thought the same way, that wouldn't work so well. I don't have anything further to add.
Councilor, would you like to say anything?
Basically close to the same. No one said anything about trucks, but equipment has to be replaced. You know, we need to have good equipment. We do need to look at it as a timely manner. I know how long things last. Road construction, in my mind, looks like previous councils have started going out that end of the township. To me, it just seems smart to just finish it off. You know, it might take a few more years or 5 more years yet, I don't know, but you know, it's just, do you get one road shy and stop? That doesn't make much sense to me. The Napier garage shop improvements, that was all good. Enumeration, we still haven't totally, that's not a done thing. We're still basically, we still have lots of comments about that to go. Yeah, and the part about the hub, can't say I'm very sold on the big idea for a lot of money, and I really feel that this building is underutilized after going downstairs the other day. To spend $200,000 on an elevator to say we have to be in compliance for possibly an employee that maybe we don't even have, that's just, to me, off the wall.
No, this is accessible.
Yeah, we have
out there.
accessibility downstairs.
And the basement's
and we have
accessible. Yeah,
so.
so if you've got everything for your staff upstairs, a little lunchroom, and you've got the offices, you should be fine.
I think this building is very underutilized at this moment, I feel. So, anyways, thank you for your comments there.
Okay. And for myself, I'm not going to make too many comments. I think with the roadways and the infrastructure for the hub and elevator and those types of things, those are already in our strat plan, and we need to be looking at those things. No matter, you know, there's going to be a dollar amount. We need to make sure that we keep on top of things instead of falling behind. In regards to the council remuneration, just I want to touch on the last paragraph there, which was that if council would like to increase its remuneration package above the normal amount, it should be proposed in the last year of the term of council. I just want to make a comment that there are council members that are in the gallery right now that also signed this letter that was on the last term of council, and if that was the case, they should have brought it up at that time and not in a letter afterwards while sitting in the gallery. So if that's the case, is that if those council members would like to say that, they should have taken the opportunity to do so when they had the chance. I think looking at this letter, I think we should probably just do a written response back from staff to thank Nick Stockman for this letter and reiterate some of those comments that were said here today. Do you need direction for that? Okay, mover and seconder for that. Councillor Clark, and second by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so moving on to item E, which is the 2019 budget. The first item is the facilities and hub creation. Kathy, would you like to proceed?
Before we get into that, I do have some good news and bad news. I wanted to announce that we did receive our 2019 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund allocation, and it is the amount as presented in the budget, which was 6028. That will be our allocation. It is, we are still under the 15% reduction from 2018. So that has been confirmed, and that number will not change in our budget going forward. There has been no indication of what's going to happen in 2020, other than they're going to review the 2020 allocations and advise us in the future. On a more positive note, on March the 20th, last Thursday, March 21st, we received notification through the mayor that Steve Clark has announced one-time funding payments to municipalities. The Township of Adelaide Metcalfe in 2019 will receive $308,544. There is very little details that accompany this, other than they have municipal service offices can offer advice and point to examples that may be helpful as you contemplate local solutions. In the future, we would be interested to hear about your modernization success stories. So there are no caveats on how we can spend the money, but it is a one-time funding allocation. We will not receive it again.
So far?
So there's no parameters around how that, like that, is it that it has to be used in the office, or
No,
there's no parameters of
There's
any
been
kind?
no
That's how I read
parameters,
that.
there's no reporting requirements. They would like to
Just a
hear how
follow-up.
we spent the money.
Okay.
They want to follow up. I spoke to ministry staff on Friday, and they advised that there is nothing that says that council can't spend some now, some later, put in reserve for a future project. There are no limitations on it at this time.
Okay.
Now, from some of the news reports, some of the MPPs, when they were handing it out, did say they wanted it spent in 2019. So, but that is not part of, there is no protocol in place that says we have to spend it in 2019. So it could be used to offset costs going forward.
And the other main part in there was it was to create efficiencies within the township.
That's
That
what
was-
I thought.
yeah.
So I thought maybe that they may come back and put a spin on that, but I wasn't sure.
Councillor Brody?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, that, you know, I've seen a lot of, just as an outsider, where they make you spend all that money on one project, and things get overspent. You really didn't want to do that kind of project. To me, that was always kind of a waste of money sometimes. If they're a little more lenient, we can, obviously they're putting trust in the municipalities to spend it wisely, which is a lot better in my mind, I would think.
And this is where we're bringing it up now, so that you have that in the back of your mind, that there is nothing specifically tied to it, so we could spend it on what council feels appropriate use of those funds. And then also on Wednesday, it was released that the gas tax fund will be doubling for 2019. So it's a one-time amount, and it's expected to equal the total amount each municipality received in 2018. So our 2019 allocation was $90,000, and we received just around that same amount in 2018. They have not released any final numbers yet, so we're still waiting for the final details on that coming out.
But they're saying it's supposed to double.
It's supposed to double
And that'll
based
be
on our last
in
year's.
19 then, starting?
Yes, for this year, for 1 year only.
Just for another
1 year
time.
only, of another one-time,
So another 90,000 basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Take it.
So that, we've used that gas tax money in the past when we're doing paving of roads to help offset the cost, because we do find that hard surface road is more energy efficient and cleaner for driving on, so those were the announcements that we wanted. Those aren't incorporated in the budget yet, but they will be, and hopefully once we have this discussion on the hub today, we will have some more information to put in there. So what staff needs from council is just what direction do you want to take in regards to a hub. In the strategic plan discussions, you identified that as a priority for 2019, as well as the administration office and works department consolidation was also identified for 2019. So we need to make some decisions so we can return to our strat plan policies and our guidelines from that, and revise them to suit what council's future is going to be, so that staff can start working on what's going to happen for 2019 and the next 3 years.
Councillor Brody?
I'll start. My opinion of the hub idea of a new office and new buildings is just going to be too far-fetched for the size of our township. We're only 3,000. We only have a $5-6 million budget, maybe not even. I can't remember the exact number, but it just seems a little too far-fetched for me. One being we don't have property to even put it on. Cost of property to even start before we even have buildings and stuff is going to be beyond reasonable amount. After touring this the other day, like with Sue and the office staff, I believe this building is being underutilized. It's not old. You know, talking with just throughout everybody, if we have to spend a little money on Napier, you know, for salt storage, and I mean we have an area up here. Even in 10 years, if you have to put another bay or two on an existing garage, I mean, I don't think we're in bad shape that our buildings are falling in and we're seeing tough times. I mean, I feel that we've got some decent enough infrastructure in place. And who knows what 5-10 years is going to bring. Like I just don't know if we want to go into a huge amount of debt. You know, to me, you need good equipment. We've got decent facilities. Keep going on the roads. I mean, keep it simple. I am going to be a pusher on the park. I do think there's money sitting there that's been talked about for years. I mean, we're not talking $1 million. We're talking a reasonable amount. That's my vision going forward.
Yeah. Councillor McKinnon?
In looking at the hub, had the township been successful in obtaining the property that we put the tender on, I think it would make more use. Mike also brought up a point about approaching one of the businesses there and trying to sever off a portion there that could be added if we were looking. Now, it isn't on the main street, it's on the back street, but I think there's a lot more questions that we have to ask ourselves still. The Optimist Club and partnering with them in regards to a possible community center. I'd like to see us continue along that line and partner with them and try to get something set up at the park that would allow the building to be used by the Scouts, the Optimists, the Girl Guides, whoever, weddings, whatever you wanted to use it for. So I think there's still needs to be discussion as to, is it plausible to get rid of this and go to the Kerwood? Yeah, I'm in my mind, had we been successful in that tender, it would have been more plausible.
Okay, Councillor Clark?
I hear from the younger, so the under 45 want the, because it doesn't matter what I think. So the under 45, they want to see, you know, something in the park, like the Optimist building and such. Some people, you know, think that, you know, we shouldn't do anything. So as if you talk to the older people, they don't want to spend any money at all. Like, not on roads, not on anything. So, and that doesn't make sense either. So we really have to shoot for a happy medium here, and we have to be able to think longer term. And I still maintain that, you know, a lot of times, like when Adelaide and Metcalfe amalgamated, sometimes you don't have a choice. So we hope that we remain a viable community, but at the end of the day, we don't know if somebody from, you know, Toronto is going to tell us that we have to amalgamate with another municipality, or maybe they have to amalgamate with us. And then if we knew that and we needed a bigger facility, then it would make sense to do something different. And then what came out yesterday, Aaron, I don't know if you picked up on this or not, at the fire meeting was, when you talk to different people around the room, you hear about the challenges of different fire departments, and you know, even the people from the fire marshals were saying, you know, maybe you're not viable here, and maybe you're here, or maybe you're only going to supply this equipment, and your neighbor's going to supply that equipment. So, I mean, you have to think about all of that too, like what the usage of buildings going forward, and we have to look at all of that, I guess, is all I'm saying. So that doesn't give you a whole lot to go on, but.
Okay.
but I like, sorry, I have one last thing.
Yeah.
But before we drop 200 grand into this building, if we knew we were gonna be here for 4 or 5 years, accessibility is a legislated thing. So I would be more comfortable rejigging the upstairs for 20 grand and making the offices and your lunchroom, and then downstairs just for council meetings. It is accessible, and both levels would be accessible if somebody came to a council meeting or they came in to pay their taxes. So, anyway.
And
That's okay.
just along that point, we may have a staff member that will need the accessibility. We don't know that, but she could.
Okay. Yeah, Councilor
In
Burke.
saying that though, you know, if that was the case, you can probably have it in her job description that she doesn't have to go grab something in the basement. I mean, she has accessibility. I mean, to say
ways to
go
work
and spend
that.
$200,000 on an elevator, in my mind, would probably never even get used.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I may, before we get
That's
too far
an
into
HR
it,
thing.
that's an HR issue, and it is
Yeah.
legislated because it becomes a human rights discrimination thing. We can't change a job description to say somebody can't do something now that they always did. So we could be challenged legally under HR policies, so.
And you could not.
And we could not, but
So,
again, it all
it's a lot of
depends, it is, but it's something that we have to have, that does have to happen, even if we have an upstairs and a downstairs, for emergency purposes, we have one exit downstairs, people have to get up the stairs to get out. We do have some work that would need to be done, it won't be just a simple fix, because we do have issues that we have one entrance, one exit, so there are issues that are larger than just because we don't want an elevator, we do have to look into properly making sure that there's entrances, exits, fire safety
So you
issues.
have two exits on this floor.
We have 3 here, yes,
Three,
but
okay,
there's
so
only
you're
one
fine.
downstairs.
Right.
And that was always a concern with a rental, if there was an emergency in getting people out, they had to get up the stairs and out the side door. So that becomes an issue as well, so it's not just, and it becomes an HR issue, and it's,
Yeah.
yeah. So it is an HR issue, it's not necessarily
No.
just a one-time.
No, you'd have to have a
thing.
second exit downstairs.
Yeah.
So the going up the stairs and inside, so if there was a rental, I believe that door, is it shut at the top of the door? At the top of the stairs?
Yes,
So-
so they can't access.
So they
it.
can't, so if there was an actual rental prior to in the basement, they couldn't actually exit out that door because it was shut off, because we couldn't have it open up or else it'd be open to the entire office. So there's only one exit in the basement.
Yeah, because they have to come upstairs and they have to unlock it and get out, so it wasn't a true emergency exit, so.
But I think there's the ways we could investigate.
Yes, there's
There's
additional
always a way to renovate.
Right, we haven't explored that entirely, but,
Yeah. But you don't
again,
wanna
we
put the
need to know
dollars
what,
in if you're
what do
gonna
we
move,
explore,
right?
because this is what we're trying to extract, is what are we looking to explore from council? What is your directive in regards to staff, and where are we proceeding? If we're going to build a hub and a centralized location, we're gonna bring all of our services under one building, where are we gonna put it? What are we gonna do? Why are we spending money doing anything, investigating any other buildings? But if we're not going to go centralization, then that eliminates that issue. So then we say, okay, we've got this building, how are we going to make the best use of this building to make sure that it's a long-term viable operation for us? And it still leads to the secondary thing. There's been discussion about having one work yard. What, you know, like, again, we want to keep going and pulling that information from council on where you want to go with this, so we know where we have to incorporate dollars and investigate into the budget and the strat plan.
Yeah, Councilor Clark?
So remind me, when are we being, excuse me, legislated for the accessibility? What is the deadline for that?
2021, unless we
Okay.
start renovations. And if we start renovations, then we're obligated to bring it to 100% accessible at that time.
So 2021, okay, I'm just
Yes.
trying to work backwards. to
Yes, so
see.
we have, there's not an immediate need for an elevator or a lift of some sort, but there is a need if we're going to continue to use a 2-floor system that we have to address it somehow. So there are options, and there are some other things that come into play as well.
Yeah, no, the
so.
reason I'm asking is if we have a gun door ahead, and irregardless if you were going with a hub or not, I just wondered from a timeline, if it had to be by the November the 1st, 2019, we have to do it, right?
We would have
So
to,
then it
yes.
would be, what would be the most cost-effective way? Okay, thank you.
So as Kathy was saying, we're going to have to do something. We just need direction of what we're wanting to do and what we're willing to do. So I think we do need to either look at this building and have it up to accessibility and up to our needs, so then we can be here for the long term, or we need to be looking at Kerwood as to if we do, relocation, centralize and do something there. But when we're looking at that, we also need to be, we've really, so far the discussion has been around the township office and not really too much about if we want to, because we don't have to move to create that hub. If we were talking about the Optimist Club, they came here and talked about having some kind of community center of some sort. We need to discuss that as to what that looks like, what the park looks like, because Councillor Brody's saying that we want to invest in the park. So what is the vision of that? If it doesn't include the township office, what is that? And we haven't talked about the centralized or amalgamating the two garages that we currently have. So just, if I could, a couple thoughts from myself. I kind of have a hard time, with the township office, with the, I think it's $200,000 for the accessibility for an elevator or whatever it would be. I think $200,000 can go a long ways for whatever the improvements are. If we can get away without having some kind of lift, then that's great. But if not, if we need to do that, then we'll have to obviously proceed with that. We just have to weigh really the pros and cons as to whether we should, stay here and invest in what we currently have, or move the office and have it centralized somewhere and start, fresh and have that there. If this, in my opinion, if we don't centralize the office to Kerwood, I'm having a hard time wanting to invest in a community hall of some sort at the park. Considering we have meeting space and hall across the road at the fire department. So if we have that space there, and in my opinion, if we're going to duplicate really the same, similar meeting space across the road at the park, that's really a duplication of infrastructure that we already have. With that being said, we do need to look at washrooms, and that's been something we've talked about for some time at the park. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I think we do need to look at that. It would, it makes it so then people, families want to go to the park, because right now they're going there and they're spending time there, but they're also discouraged to go there because the only washroom facility there is a porta potty.
Yeah.
That's
well,
it.
and you can't run across to the church hall anymore.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
it's accessible. It's not that accessible.
As for the garages, I see, where they are, it works well with being centralized in the two former municipalities. However, I do see efficiencies that can be created with having the works garage under one roof, one works yard area, and having it in an area that works well. It doesn't have to be Kerwood. It could be wherever we can find a spot, and just duplication of equipment and that type of thing. And I'm not sure where that the number was, but I think somewhere in our some papers we received a couple last term or 2 terms ago, the lifespan of the buildings, they are nearing the end of its lifespan. And I remember when we were touring the works yard in the last term, I remember the Napier garage, there's the pillars themselves, I don't know if they're getting rusted out, or maybe Jeff will even talk about that. I know that Ellen was mentioning that the building is not as sound as it could be. So at the same time, we need to be looking at everything, because if we are going to be investing any money into either works garage, then we're going to be there for the long haul. So and then just going to what Councillor Clark was saying with the fear of amalgamation, if you want to call it a fear, or the thought of pressures from Toronto coming down. When you look at the works yard, and when I look at the works yard compared to I look at a municipal office, is that if we were to look at the municipal office to Kerwood and we create that hub, and then say in 10, 15 years, whatever it is, we're forced to have amalgamation, then that building isn't really in good use. It's going to be a useless building for that area, because most likely that's not where the municipal office would be. But when you look at a works garage, we're always going to have roads, we're always going to have sidewalks, we're always going to have those things. So that is an area that I think we can invest in, because we are going to have those no matter what in the future in our area. But long term, we don't know what it is, but I can say we will have roads. We will have to have a fire department. We will have those things. Yeah, but I can't say that we for sure will need, to relocate the office, and there will be a need for office space there. But I can. Then that's where I've kind of, in my mind, kind of went from the switch of, yes, I would like to have a hub in Kerwood and whatever that looks like. I don't know if that includes the office, but I can say that it would make a lot of sense in my mind to merge those two garages somewhere and build something, because when you look at the two and the investments that we need to make it, what it should be, that's something that can be invested in and we can have for a long time because it's needed. So, Councillor Brody, you had your hand up before, and then
Just one comment when you said about the fire. I had a lot of respect for what previous council did with that fire hall and build it the way they did. They built it under budget. They didn't go extreme. To me, that is not a hall there at all. That is the office for the fire department. They have how many guys do you have? 20, 25 guys. You can't have anything else in there hardly with what you guys need it for. It didn't go extreme. It's paid for. I mean, I don't think that's a comparison at all. I mean, if you start pushing your fire guys out of that little area to say you're going to use it for something else, I don't think that's. I think you'd have a little bit of fight back from some pretty good fire people. I would think.
And just my comment to that is, council did a good job of making it so it was a building that was, financially made sense, but at the same time, if we would have invested more money at the time, we would have had a hall that was large enough that you're speaking of. And on top of that, it is currently used by community members. There are different groups that currently rent it out, and I think that council needs to seriously look at that building before we look at building something very similar across the road, because it is there, it is infrastructure that we already have, and we need to look at what the policies are for making that so it's usable for the community. And we also have to be mindful that that facility is used by the fire department, but it is a building of the township of Adelaide Metcalfe, and council has that direction as to how that space is used. Councillor McKinnon?
Just speaking with our MPP on the weekend, he encouraged us to have an infrastructure application for something, and we've got multiple choices that we could look at. The community center, the new, recreation facility for washrooms, so we should be looking at that right away.
Councillor Park?
This maybe is a little bit directed at Aaron. So when I visited you at the fire hall, we sort of walked around. So is there any wiggle room for because you're on sewers, right? So it's not like you've got. So the reason I'm asking is Betty Ann and a few of us were at the fire meeting yesterday in Warwick. So we stuck around and got a tour, and they explained to us that this was a fire hall and then this was the addition. And they said that addition was done, I believe, in 2013. It was about $750,000. So in today's dollars, that would be a lot more money. Mm-hmm. And then he also showed us that they didn't account for the raised bed, and you have to assume you got 6 people flushing the toilet 9 times, or whatever that equation is for the day. So then the parking that was supposed to be there, we were all parked on the road yesterday because they have no parking in the back. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I'm wondering, is there any wiggle room to expand? Because the hall that we were in yesterday is got to be 3 or 4 times, well, am I exaggerating? 3 times the size of the hall at the fire department?
Yeah,
would you say?
Oh,
yeah.
You were
Yeah,
Warwick?
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that was built as a hall. Yeah.
Like it's a proper hall, right?
Yeah.
So how much wiggle room, would there be there? And I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just sort of thinking of options.
So, if I may speak to that, so there is no room to expand. The apparatus bays are on the west side,
Okay.
so you can't, have, and the property line in the back doesn't go very far beyond the building.
And what about to the north?
So, no,
Nothing?
it's right behind the building, then there's the Britain property right behind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's no room to expand there. And then if I could speak to renting it more to, the public, whatever, it's pretty much maxed out. It's rented more and more all the time, but I wouldn't want to see it being rented out any more than what it is. Because, it gets rented out and then I've got training schedules. next month, but then I have to look, I better make sure it's not rented out that day, and, you know, and there's weekends, training sometimes, and there's night. So, the amount of times it's rented is good, but I wouldn't, advertise anymore.
Okay.
So, it's had its limit, I would say, both the size of the building, just because of the size of the lot, and the way it's laid out, it wasn't intended for that.
Okay.
At the time, it was never brought up for that purpose, so that's the way it is, the way it is.
Yeah, and to your point about amalgamating the two garages, you know, that's tough because then you're back to the conversation of do you acquire property, and property's expensive, and how we'd have to look at all of that and where you put it, and it's not easy, is it?
Yeah, just a comment. You know, if we had, I agree with what Betty said. Like, if we had acquired a property and we could have sold some of it off and we had it there, that's a different story. Sitting here trying to, like, we don't know where we can do it. Like, I mean, people might not even want to sell property at the edge of town. Farmers, land's getting more valuable by the hour. Seems like, you know. I have a big problem with, because we don't even have a spot to go. Like, we don't have it. It's not sitting here at us that we have this piece of property. Okay, we already own it. Let's look at a budget for a new building. That's a big hold up for me.
Councilor?
One of the things that the previous councils did well, and I don't know if it was the last one or two councils ago, was they had focus groups. And I thought that was very, that was great that you guys did that. From those focus groups, did anything come from those with respect to a hub or centralizing or anything? Like, was there any feedback, or maybe that wasn't on the radar, I don't know.
So those focus groups were done prior to the strat plan, so that's how we came up with the strat plan. So the strat plan indicates that we need to look at the hub.
Wanted that. Oh, okay, then that's valid. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clark, I don't know if you can speak to this. How often in the past, has the parish hall been rented out? Do you know that information?
I don't know exact numbers. I know, like, the Optimists had a standing agreement and it's in effect till June, I believe. And I think the Brownies were using it.
Yeah, Girl Guides. I think the Scouts used to be at the church. I don't even know if there's Scouts right now.
Yeah, and then there was a couple of key families that people would know the names. There's 4 or 5 in the Curry community. That's all there is. And then, anyway, they would rent it for Christmas parties, but then they stopped doing that because of the shape of the hall. It is what it is.
P&H
so
had a Christmas party. They didn't have it this year because the fall was late and they were still just way too busy.
But then didn't they have it at the fire hall? Or that was Cargill or somebody else? Somebody not have a Christmas party there?
Well, there's been, yes, it was one. Being Green Company.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but back to the Curry Hall. So those families that historically rented it for family functions, they've gone to Strathroy, to the Anglican Church Hall, and other places. So, yeah.
And the only reason I asked is just to figure out,
Usage.
the use of that to then have it, whatever the usage of that hall, what it was and what it currently is, if it's able to be.
Right, so to your point, so that was one of the questions I asked the fire chief, I assume he was yesterday, and I said, like, how often do you rent that hall out of the time? And I think his answer was about 30%. And they can hold up to legally 139 people. They've had 180. They do funeral lunches in there. They do weddings, like larger functions. So they have the availability to do that.
I remember at this time, now that you're bringing all this up, they had a major fundraising push in the community. Brad Goodhill did.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they raised a lot. I can find out. I'm very good friends with Brad with the number. He'll know. But they had a major community fundraising project for that. That wasn't all township money. And they pushed, Brad was a big pusher to get that size of a hall compared to basically maybe just what they have here.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, she said
now
it
I
was
do
about
remember that. There was a
750.
lot of money that was raised publicly
Okay.
to put into that project.
That's good.
A lot of it.
No wonder it came in under budget.
Yeah.
It'd be on budget.
Oh, on
It was
budget.
right on
That
It
budget.
was
Yeah.
not, yeah, but he
it's on budget.
micromanaged it too from the
Yes.
sounds of it, which is
Yes,
good.
he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Well, and that's what we did when we were building the fire hall. Aaron was overseer along with the contractor, and he kept us on
Well,
budget.
with his eyes on it, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, good.
I guess just
Yeah.
one more comment. I guess one more thing, you know, one thing we have to look at is what is the value of this property and stuff then? You know, what can we recoup to move to a bigger idea? I mean, is there $750,000 worth of value in this place to be sold? 500? I'm just throwing numbers out there, but that has to be looked at as well to see, you know, if we do something, this will be sold.
Mhm.
That affects the budget by a lot.
Okay.
Okay, so I just jotted down my comments and we'll start with the fire hall because again, that's already in existence, it's a tangible. The fire hall, the rental space is about 850 square feet. It is on the Kerwood sewer system, but it was designed and built to be a training facility for the firefighters. So that was the first and foremost thought. So it wasn't really designed adequately for a rental facility. And it does come into, if we wanted to move it into a rental facility, then we'd have to face some other challenges, which would include providing proper storage and location for the firefighter training supplies and their information, which right now is within the rental room. We'd also have to look at improvements to the kitchen to meet any health unit requirements, which would likely include, depending on the numbers that can be in there, whether we would have to get a dishwasher, we'd have to test the water and do all of those things. We'd have rental administration and cleaning costs that would come along with that. We'd have to look at our parking area because I don't believe at the time a rental hall was considered.
No.
The parking was based on being used for the firefighters for their training purposes. So we'd have to look at an expansion of the parking area. We would have to implement and get into place an alcohol policy for the facility, and that would also incur greater liability for the township. We'd have to look at the compatibility of having a hall there with it being our emergency response center as well as emergency services coming in, and that's where parking and making sure people aren't in the wrong spot really comes into play. There is some special features in the building of the fire hall. It's rated for a post emergency construction, I believe, so it's got a higher quality of construction, so adding on to it would incur additional, I'm not sure how that compatible it would be to add on a hall feature onto it, which would only place we'd be able to do it would be on the north side, north side of the property. And again, we would have to look at fire ratings and parking and all of the implications that come along with that. So, although the fire hall is there, it wasn't really intended, and it doesn't seem to be really suitable. 850 square feet really isn't. It's a meeting hall, not necessarily a rental hall. So. It's fine for small venues and that kind of thing, but whether it would be okay a 20 by 40 addition on it or 20 by 60, as the Kerwood Optimist presented, that 20 by 60 or 40 by 60 would not be able to happen. We only have 38 feet to the north, so we would only be able to go out 20 feet. So you'd be creating a long and narrow venue. So that's not always conducive to rentals either. So, and then we also get into, again, someone has to look after it and make sure things are getting done. We get into deposit systems and how much rental do you have to charge to recoup your costs, or you're investing money for what purpose. So again, the fire hall may not be the most suitable location for that.
So how big is that fire hall meeting room right now? Like, is it like 20 by 40 or what is it?
It's 26.3 by 33 something. I have the plans there. I just did it last night.
Oh,
so.
okay. Yeah, no, I'm just curious. So
It's
not
approximately
really cool.
850 square feet. So
Okay.
yeah, so it isn't large. And again, we would have to look at if you're starting to change it structurally, what are you going to do and what's the cost to do that?
So then to that point, if we're going across the road and putting what do we call it, community center in across the road, from a land mass standpoint, like, is there enough room there at the front, or that's when you start blowing out stuff to make room? Like, can somebody speak to that?
Well, I think it is tight. You got 2 ball diamonds, you've got the new playground equipment is fine, that's all fine for you. I think the talk about playground equipment wasn't good anymore, it's just the little old stuff in front of the one pavilion.
But the rest is fine.
To me, the one pavilion already is 20, what they say, like,
24 years?
you know, you're really not saving much with it. To me, either you've got to do something like they kind of come up with a small idea in that area, and you could just rip the one, you're not saving anything anyways, and put a lien on the back of a building. Or you almost need to see if we can get a little bit of property more to the north and do something where the old barn, or, you know, if you could get 2 acres or 3 acres more, or an acre, like, it's very limited. The space would be limited there, for sure.
It would definitely be a tight fit there. That's where we tried last year to get quotes from engineers to come in and do a master plan, to take a look at it and see what options are available, what area could be utilized, and all of that investigation we had no one did on our project. So there are. So before we get into that, let's just eliminate something. So if we had to say what would be eliminating the fire hall as a revamp to a rental unit, is that something that council's off the table? At this point in time, like, I don't know if we can say it's like off the table, but it's not the top priority. So it would be something that we could say, okay, let's just park that idea, and if everything else fails, that would be the last resort kind of thing.
Before we continue, just my initial thought for all those bullet points you came through, except for the addition, those are things we already have to do, in my opinion. We already have to look at having, if we're already renting it out to community groups, we already need to be putting the training material. It can't not, in my opinion, it shouldn't be out. We should already have an alcohol policy that's being rented out. We already have the issue of the health unit requirements. That should already be being dealt with. And what was the one?
Well, the cleaning.
And the cleaning, that's already something that happened. So I think all of those bullet points, those are all things we already should be doing. No matter if we, I guess, open the doors up to having other people rent. Those are all things that need to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was going to bring this in when we start talking back to this building, because we kind of jumped spaces everywhere. But that's where we could come back to this building and say, if we need a rental hall, if we're going to improve this building and remain here, why not improve the downstairs and use it as a rental hall? There are improvements that need to be done. Yes, we have to look at making sure there's entrances and exits and all of that, and we would likely still have to move stuff upstairs and possibly have an addition because we don't have enough room for storage up here. One of the concerns is our servers downstairs, and all of that's downstairs. So if it would be possible to bring it all on one level, the downstairs could be reutilized for a rental hall. If the intent is to not build a rental hall somewhere else. Or a facility somewhere else.
I got 2 comments. One, I think the fire hall should be just left off of. Like, I mean, I think there's no space for parking for it. Like, it has to be a small. I think the fire hall we shouldn't even look at anything there. It's the fire department, in my mind, to utilize it. I think there's no room for an expansion there. There's no room for parking. There's no room for anything there. I think that should be just left as fire. I feel pretty strong about that. Next, I don't think making a hall in this building, we're never going to get enough rental. The idea isn't a hall at the park. The idea is we have to have some bathrooms. We have to have some stuff. We're not really making it you're not even the size of a hall, say in Warwick. Like, it's not like we're going to start having big venues. We just have nothing. When the church hall closes, there's nothing. Where's my next train of thought with this? I lost it. But yeah. Oh, and this building, I really think this building is underutilized. You guys need on the other side of the wall need space. Well, this basement is not getting used at any kind. Storage of boxes. I mean, we have facility here. Let's knock a wall out and make some more room here. I mean, we have space that's not being utilized right now, by far.
That's fine.
Yeah, so part of my reason of asking Aaron, that I already knew the answer to some of the questions, but it was just to bring it out so that we take that off the table, I guess, because it's not big enough, right? For what, and to Curtis's point, all of those conditions that Kathy mentioned, they should be in place right now anyway. So, yeah, so I agree.
So I guess the question is, if the fire meeting space is not big enough, then what is the size we're looking for, and what groups, so other than the Optimist Club that is requesting a meeting space, who are we trying to, I don't want to say accommodate for, but what are we looking for? What are we looking for a community center? Are we trying to attract people to come there? Like, what are we trying to do?
I'm not thinking community center. We're not big enough. There's all that stuff around. Basically, all we need is a building that. Well, just look at the old building that they use at the park for the fish fry and everything else. Like it stores stuff. It's almost big enough, but it's 100 years old. It's an old horse barn. Like we're not talking a community center. Like, I don't think this isn't $1 million project here. We're only talking a building that, in my mind, $300,000 would go a long way. I mean, we have sewer hookup. We just need something I don't think we need to look at people to come and create revenue. We're not going to get that. You know, I think we just need to build something very realistic, very, very small, big enough that when the stuff gets done at the park, like the fire fish, like we're going to need some. When that hall closes and sold, there's nothing. And the fire department is just not big enough to utilize for anything else. My suggestion, more I think about it, is maybe we should look at the neighboring north property, seeing if we can gain an acre or two. And I don't want to I'm not thinking a community center. Like this is smaller scale thoughts than that. It's basically almost replacing the horse barn building with putting washrooms in, and just make sure we build it big enough that we have a little bit of storage facility, or I guess we can put a kitchen in it or not. I mean, I don't know, but I think we just have to be realistic on what we're doing.
So what you're saying, washrooms, storage, and are you saying a meeting place?
Well, your store, yeah, but
the storage is the meeting place.
Well, we only
what are you storing, really?
Yeah, you gotta look at what size you build it, but I think I can't remember what they just wanted an idea, but it wasn't big. It wasn't, I would want to do it I want to do it a little bigger than that, and you don't want to make the same mistake that you're going to go too small. But I'm not thinking of it. It's not a hall or
So, is there water there?
Yes.
Oh,
We would have to do testing.
well?
There's a well.
There's a well.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I mean, that's an issue too, right?
Yes.
But one more thought, in thinking of seeing if we could go to the north a little bit. I know they're not talking, the P&H maybe would want a road access, like maybe that's something if we do that, should that be looked at the same time? You know, so you're taking that truck access out of the town and coming up the side, so maybe we could pick up 3 or 4 acres to the north, or whatever the feasibility would be, but that would take a lot of truck traffic, access back there out. And maybe if we did something like that, I'm going to talk way out of text, but maybe a company like, maybe we could get a little bit of extra property for something out of park as part of because they do only, I'm not sure where the lines are, but I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point, because the truck traffic is.
The truck traffic is
an
heavy,
issue.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an issue.
Right.
That might kill two birds with one stone.
And they're talking about, I think, some more expansion, some more bids, so that's only gonna get bigger, and the trucks are bigger, and everything's bigger to get turning in town. You know, that is a nice access, but it would take, you have to acquire land to do that, right? I mean,
So what's the thoughts on this side with a community center or a building of some sort?
As I said earlier, I'd like to see us partner with the Optimus. I don't know if I'm sort of thinking that we should just be the money broker for this and have the Optimus and the community fundraise. And because we can issue tax receipts for donations, I would recommend that we be the tax broker, or not the tax broker, but the money broker, yeah, and administrator of it. I don't see like a huge building, but I think Councillor Brody touched on some good points about the fish fry and the Scouts and the Optimists and the Girl Guides using it.
Well, to that end, the park doesn't generate money right now, so you can't look at it always from that perspective. Like, I'd like to, because that's how my mind works. I'm like, okay, this doesn't cash flow, so why are we doing it? But it's part of the community. And to your point, your opening comments, if you want to attract people to the area, you have to have a park for the kids to play in, or whatever, right? So
schools and churches.
yeah, so yeah, I just don't know on the blueprint or the footprint you have right now how realistic that is. And to your point, there's no point duplicating it, having the exact same, like if you got 20 by 40 on this side of the road, you're going to do 20 by 40 here, unless you got a bridge going between it for an event. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we have to look at that park and say what makes sense there. And we also have to keep in mind that we have dollars sitting that were donated to the township from Suncor specifically for the park. So it's not like we're going to taxpayers. I mean, for 263,000 or 268 or whatever that number is that we have in reserves, that money's already there. So that can go a long way, and especially if we do partner with the community group. But you know, like I said, the hall in Warwick was 750,000, and that was 6 years ago too. So, but they got three furnaces in there too, right? Like I don't know. I would probably challenge the engineer on that one, but I don't know if it was a bit overkill.
Heated floors.
Yeah. So I don't know that you need all that, but.
And I think just add on, Councillor Rodier, you know, mentioned, you know, adding more land onto the north and looking at that. When we start doing that, we're already starting to purchase land. That's when I go and say, if we're going to have some kind of hall of some sort in Curtin, we're going to be building that there, and if it's going to be an actual, you know, whatever it's going to be. I know you're not saying, you know, a community hall of some sort, but that's kind of what it's going to end up being. And that's where I have a hard time saying, if we're going to be purchasing land and we're going to be building an actual community center, because at the end of the day it will be what it is, then I have a hard time saying that we need to stay here. Because realistically, if we're purchasing land and we're already investing in that area there with a community center and a hall of some whatever it is, then I say, how much more will it actually cost to have this office space there? We could sell this property here and invest it there, and then you can have a dual purpose community room where it can be half used by, you know, the council chamber and also used by the community. I'm having I have a hard time saying we need to build a 60 by 40 building of some sort in Kerwood if it's only going to be used X amount of days out of the year, and also have this facility here, and also have a meeting space across the road which is being used quite often. And if the idea with the fire department is to have it so it's only used for fire services, then that means that we need to then, if we build something across the road, then that meeting space that it's currently being used for all those rentals and need to be shifted over to the new space. Because if we're also looking at not having the fire department area used for rentals at all, then we need to cut it off, or we need to open it up to everyone. So if we are looking at purchasing land, or we are looking at building a large community center, whatever it is, that's when I have a hard time saying, let's build a new facility when we already have this here. How much more will it cost to relocate these offices?
But I think Mike did say you
Yeah.
sell this place.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, but
that was the.
no, I know that would be the case, but I think, Mike, you were mentioning just purchasing land just for a hall itself.
Well, no,
Adding
no,
to
no,
the- to
no. We can. There's room. We wouldn't have to. But then, as my mind started going
Mm-hmm.
and thinking access, you know, road access, because there's going to be some expansion of the elevator. I do believe. So you have some valid points there. I like what you're saying. So I think first thing we need to do before we just keep circling here is approach to the north and to the south, whoever owns land, if this is even possible, that there could be something purchased. Is this property, like, can this building be separated from the township garage and sold?
As a municipality, we have that authority to do so.
Okay, and
Yes.
as long as we had a rough idea of that, because I mean, I would think to build a new municipal office and have a little bit of a hall, I mean, $1 million isn't gonna touch that. It's not gonna touch it.
No.
Plus the purchase of land, and, that's my big struggle is we can spend $250,000, $300,000 and have a nice little thing in Kerwood. We are small. My big struggle is this turns into $1.5 million or $2 million project. I mean, I just have trouble with that. A lot of trouble with it.
Well, and to your point earlier, is if we ever did get eaten up in amalgamation or something, at least the hall's still there, right? But yeah, but we don't want to duplicate what's already across the road, right? Because it's only, yeah.
But I don't think across the road should even be on the
No.
grade anymore. I really don't. I think it's very well utilized, and that's the way it should stay, personally.
So,
Bottom
bottom line, so fire hall, we're still leaving it at the bottom of that's last resort type thing. So should staff be looking at the Kerwood Park and saying, what areas do we have? Like, I know what we have there and what the acreage is. What do you want to build there? Is it a 40 by 60 building? Are you going to accommodate the optimists and give them a place to meet and understand that no matter what you build there, it's going to be a loss, it's going to cost you, and it's going to be a loss, because halls will not make you money in this day and age. We are not going to do that. So for you know, the small rentals that are out there and needing a small venue, is a 40 by 60 building too big for meetings held twice a month? The guides and the scouts, I can't believe there's more than 25, 30 people that would attend any one of those evenings.
No.
They're small. I'm not sure about the optimists, but I don't know how many attend on a regular basis on their 2 meetings a month. So if there's 25 people attending, we have a hall, we're going to warm it up in September, October, November, December, January. We're going to turn the heat on the day before to have it warm enough to have 25 people sit in one corner. So I don't know how, like, where do we want to go with this? Like, essentially, do we want to look at a large building, or are we just going to make our park our hub, the park itself be the hub, provide washrooms, provide a small storage area that accommodates as well for the optimists, for the fish fry, for the bartending at the tournament, ball tournament, a small serving area. I don't know if we can have a kitchen in there even, because then you get into that additional cost and the requirements. Do we just go and fix the park up and do what the park should be? Because it can be a beautiful park. If it had washrooms, it would be probably used way more than it is now. It's used really well right now, but it's not used well enough. Like, there's lots of opportunity there. We would likely lose 1 pavilion, if not 2, but pavilions aren't that expensive to rebuild. So if we built a building within the property that we own, what will we lose? What will we gain? I've been to lots of ballparks in my lifetime. One of the well organized ones, orientation wise, it's not good. It's trying to satisfy 2 masters, being soccer and baseball, but the one at the Southwest Middlesex, at their ball diamond, is very well designed. It has a canteen on the northwest end, On the, behind that is washrooms on both sides and storage rooms, as well as a large awning area that's cement with picnic tables, so people can go under there when there's inclement weather. So unfortunately, its orientation isn't good either way to see, you know, people coming and going, but it's got a nice alleyway in between, lots of storage. So is that something that council want, like, we need to know whether you want to build it, are we building a hall, or are we building a facility and improving our facility to accommodate what we know we have in the community? Like you said, there's not a lot of rentals anywhere, so if we're building a rental hall, just, if we build it, are they going to come?
Right.
They will come to the ballpark.
Yeah.
I can see us having that ballpark, because washrooms are one of the biggest things. When we say, there's no washrooms there, they go, oh, well, what do? Well, we have a porta potty. Oh, so
Yeah.
people aren't as interested because we don't offer what we should be having in our facilities. So it comes down to what, you know, again, there's a report there from 2016 when we went to Suncor to get the additional funds. That's what was proposed, just washroom building, improving the general facility, the general parks, getting the ball diamond fenced, the front one fenced, or either fenced and leaving the standard where it is, or moving that standard to a safer location. It is a risk out there in the middle of the field. Somebody could run into it and it's a problem. But I guess the bottom line is, what does council really want to see built, and what do we want to spend our funds on? Like, we do have money available. We have some money in reserves. It hasn't all been delegated to recreation, but council does have the authority to move money from other places. Reserves are hard to put back in because it takes a lot of commitment to make that happen. As you can see also, I provided you with a bit of a forecast for the next 10 years. Jeff will have done one up, just to kind of give you, we're working on this and getting in our asset management plan, but we're looking at some major costs when it comes to capital projects outside of recreation too. We have fire trucks that are going to be replaced in 2025 and 2027. We have they are $400,000 or $500,000, give or take, for those projects. In 2019, Jeff has already indicated that he needs a $400,000 truck to be replaced. That's a 12-year cycle. So we've got that one in 2019. We have another one for 2020, 2021. Then we get into needing the graders replaced. So, you know, there's the big picture things, and right now all of our money in reserves isn't going to pay for everything we need to do. So it all comes down to, what's the taxpayer going to sustain? Do they want to see a hall built and just bleed money every year? Or do we improve our park, provide those services, which is under council's mandate to provide recreation, and just hope that the Optimists can find a home somewhere else? Because if we're building it to provide a home for someone, yes, we can partner with them, but they could be gone tomorrow. We will still be here, and the taxpayers of Adelaide Metcalfe will still be paying for that hall for all that time. So it comes down to, what does council want to see as their direction?
That's okay.
And we do have the alternative to Mike's point, this building being underutilized, the Optimists could use downstairs as a meeting room.
Yeah, but I still think the offices need more space.
Yeah,
But
we could
need
probably,
that.
either way, we probably still could use more space here.
Yeah.
It's not a very good layout. We could probably do more here.
Yeah.
But could we make small adjustments and have a usable hall for the Optimists for a meeting space? We could provide them meeting space. We could provide, they could also use council chambers. Now, it comes down to, other factors will come into play as well. Is it a suitable location? Is it too far? They did make a presentation about having alcohol to be served, not going to be allowed. So there are other implications, whether we can satisfy all of their requirements. I'm not sure, but we can at least work with them to provide them at the minimum someplace to meet some of their requirements in the interim.
So to your point about the alcohol, they would have to have a liquor license, correct? So then how would that look? So let's say we go ahead with the hall in the Kerwood Park. So every meeting they would have to have a liquor license?
That would be something that would have to be negotiated. Whether they undertook, because they're the primary fundraiser group in the area, they could take the licenses themselves. So any event that's there, the Optimist Club would have to would have first right of refusal to be the servers acted off at her end. So that's an option, and that has worked in other municipalities. Whether it's something that the Optimist Club wants to undertake, because they don't have to be the servers for that event, but it does make for some additional work to be done, because then all their alcohol has to be moved out, and
We
you know.
have to do that now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand for
So-
the liability standpoint.
Yeah, so it would be up to them if they chose to do that, otherwise every event they have, they would have to apply for a special occasion permit.
Even for their meetings.
Councilor Brody?
Well, just to speed this up, because we got some other stuff to look at, but I think the park is not big enough to do any kind of expansion also. One, if we, to even think about options, we need to go to the owners of North and South to see if that's even possible. Might be a flat no. If it's a flat no, well, then we're back to here, right? My suggestion would be to approach a P&H if we were to put access back there for a road for future expansion for them. Would they be a little, they're a big company, generous in the background for something for the park for that? Because I mean, if they put more bins, more stuff back there, which I know the fertilizer plant's already been, that should almost maybe get looked at. But we can't go anywhere with just spinning discussions on if we're gonna have a hall or if we're gonna have a municipal office if we don't even know we have property. Right? So I think to speed this up, that's number one.
And I think at the end of the day, so if we do have the property, and I'm assuming depending on the price, then is council wanting to go forward with it?
Well, that's what but we need to know if we can get it to even start with, correct?
Well, no, I think
It'll be a
If
short.
they, so the
Yeah.
answer is, if the answer is no, then what are we doing? If the answer is yes, we
Yeah.
can get it, which way would that go? And you're saying, would we then sell this, build there, do it all in one and be done?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is there's no, if council at the end of the day is not even willing to relocate and do a centralized hub, there's no sense of asking that question. So what I think I would like to hear is if council or if staff is willing to look into purchasing land in the Crow area, whether it's north of the park or wherever it is, I'm assuming that's a commitment of council that we're going to proceed with this.
That would have been my thought, because if we had been, what's the word I'm trying to, successful in obtaining that one property, I believe the intention was to create the hub and
Yeah.
move everything to the one area. So that would be my intention. I would be in favor of moving forward, or looking at the option of moving forward
Yeah,
and
I can
relocating
support that.
everything.
But like I said, first I think we
But
need
you have to know if you have land.
Yeah.
Is
Yes,
this
no,
the
I
north
agree.
and the east, is that?
It's
what we're-
north and
North
west.
and east, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then is that the same idea for the garages as well? Or are we liking where the
I
garages
kinda
are?
like where they are, just because they, like for your accessibility, like you got, your guys do this part and then they do this part, right? So, because then the next point is, if you centralize them, you've gotta have land to do that, and that's an additional cost. And then where do you put it?
And the only reason that I'm more for the looking at the garages compared to a centralized hub is because you don't know what the future holds with 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, and those garages are getting to a lifespan cycle, and we will have roads, and we do need a
Always.
facility.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I also want to seriously look at that as well. And the more, looking at the sand and salt storage, if we're looking at, it would be $270,000. That's more than $250,000. We're saying we're gonna stay.
You're in then at that point.
We're
You're
in,
you're
and that's where we need to seriously look at it now compared to in a couple years or whatever it is, because if it does, 10 years, if there is a forced amalgamation, Adelaide Metcalfe taxpayers sunken X number of dollars for a facility that probably isn't gonna be there.
But to your point, so if it ever got to out, where are the closest salt yards? Like we've got the county one here, which provides backup for this. What's the nearest one to the Adelaide? Does anyone know the answer to that?
There is no.
Yeah, so exactly, so
No, I
even
know.
even if for some strange reason we absorbed South, let's say all the stars lined up and we took over Southwest
Yeah.
Middlesex, let's just say.
Yeah.
So, who's servicing, where is the yard for downtown Glencoe? Like where's the salt yard for that? Where's it come from?
There's one
Way
off
off
of
of
number two,
Yeah.
and there's one out
Long ways
Apple
away.
Road. And then, yeah.
Okay, no, I'm just thinking.
No,
longer
no, I
term,
know,
like
and
we
I
have to
think-
think-
Thanks, Nick.
And what I'm thinking is longer term is that both locations doesn't have that much
No.
area to expand, that's all.
Exactly.
So, anyway, so I think, so the direction right now is that staff is to look into, I guess, property and, yeah.
And it would be interesting to know the size of this property here and how we could, if we were looking at severing it from the garage, you know, how much land do we have and how far out could we go with any renovations or improvements to this building if we were.
Even though your focus group said they wanted a central hub.
Centrals, yeah.
Yeah. If we're looking at everything, look at everything.
Yeah, I guess.
Jeff?
Well, just a small comment to Councillor Clark. When we look at sand salt storage, we should have it within the territory. So for instance, even though the Adelaide Garage uses the county storage down the road, our roads are around the
Yes,
sand salt shed.
yeah.
So if we were looking to the south and we were to go to further south to southwest Middlesex or some other one, we're actually driving out of our road territory to get that material, whereas these two trucks are actually getting the material and they're still within their routes, which makes a big difference.
Yeah. No, I maybe miscommunicated. I wasn't suggesting, I was just saying like down the road if we became this massive, where is the nearest one? But if for now, like, well, we still are the way we are, we have to be able to service what we have. So I'm not proposing shutting the nuclear salt thing by any means.
No. And all I was saying was that if we're going to invest a large dollar amount, I think
It's a
we should
commitment.
invest, it's a commitment, and if we're going to do that, I would rather see it committed in investing in a new facility somewhere where we don't have the duplication of everything. We have all the guys under one yard and an area that we can expand and we can look to the future. That's the only suggestion that I had.
In saying that, I like your comments, Chris. In saying that, I think we need to get a hold of P&H. They own land. They probably want a road access. They're the
Because
people
that's
we
gonna
need to
tell you
talk
real
to.
quick. That'll tell you real quick. what
They're the
you
people
know.
we need to talk to.
Yep.
You work with us, we'll work with you. Awesome.
Okay. So any other direction that you need, Kathy?
So I need a direction, because right now I'm like, I don't know.
We
what
all
we're-
are.
I don't know what we're doing
I think
first,
number
because-
one, that is.
Because, again, we have an our strat plan, you wanted a strat plan, I'm trying to get it designed to come back to you. So 2019, you wanna build a hub, but we still don't know what we're building. And in 2019, you wanna talk about administration office. So,
Well, we need to find land.
So I think
So,
first of all,
but-
you have to find out Mike's point.
but,
So she's looking for direction, so
Yes.
you need a
so I
motion
need some
to-
sort of
someone
specific
to tell
motion,
you
because
what
we
to do.
can't just put out there, we're looking for land, because we'll have a lot of people calling us saying, hey, I got some for
No,
sale.
no.
So we need to have
So I'll
specific,
put forward a motion, that, we instruct, the office to, reach out to, P&H to see if they would like to be a good community partner and, participate in the discussion, as well as in that discussion speak to their needs for roads as well.
And into that discussion, I think the property to the north that we didn't purchase, maybe there could be a minor variance with some of purchase
For the road, yeah.
from
I think
P&H.
it's a-
That's-
we should have two. I think we
I
should
think
talk
that
to
person would
P&H
have to be-
first and then see what their interest is, because if they're not interested
There's
in
no point.
helping assist
Yeah.
put a road in,
Yeah.
which they might say, yeah, we don't care, we don't need it, we're not gonna do that. You know, again, we don't know
Yeah.
what their intentions are long-term either, so they may say, no, we're not ever gonna
Okay, so
put
my
anything back
motion is
there,
for you
so.
to engage with them to
Yes.
see about, partnering with the community, giving us some
Yeah,
land.
first,
And then
then I would say second.
Okay, so let's just get this motion done.
So we reach out to P&H as a community partner for discussion on recreation and expansion of
The park.
the park.
Yeah, because that's technically what it is right now, they don't need to know what our
Okay.
objectives
So that's
are.
moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And then the second motion that I think we're intending
Well, second motion, Mr. Mayor, I would think if P&H is willing and responsive even, it might have to move to the property to the north, just because that's the only access back. So I think if there was interest in ownership from P&H, it might have to get spun to the property to the north.
Are we wanting to specifically say in a motion that property, or are we
So
wanting to have
your
a broader?
motion is that you want P&H to, you want to engage in conversation with P&H to rejig road access to their facility, period, right? Isn't that kind of, because that's a one bullet point.
But they don't own, so if there's interest, it would have to get moved to the next property or to the north.
Right, but you have to find out if they want to even do that.
Yeah,
if
P&H
that's something-
first, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because there's no point stirring the pot if nobody's. So that's he's moved that, I'll second it.
Yep.
Wah, wah, wah. That's tough, eh?
Should the motion say reconvene or adjusting boundaries on the southerly side?
It just says that staff reach out to surrounding property owners to determine level of interest in supporting expansion and development of the park.
Good.
That's the first one.
That's the second one.
Well, I thought the second one was about
Surrounding property
surrounding
owners.
property
Because
owners
again,
for
we
road access.
need to talk
We just need to
about,
talk to everyone.
we need to
Okay.
talk to everyone before, because we don't know, if we just say it's on this side, what's on the south side? Maybe we should look at that as well, and there may be options there, so, we'll talk to P&H to decide, to discuss if they're interested in working as a community partner on getting the expansion of the recreation in the park, and then also reach out to the surrounding property owners to determine the level of interest in supporting an expansion of the park.
Just one comment to they would have, you'd have to tell P&H a little more than just park, like, I mean, you would have to.
So that'll happen.
Yeah,
in these
but just essentially
That's why I
because we're
wanted
looking
to
at
know.
adding it to the park, so it would become our hub. So we would, give them the whole plan that it would become part of a hub and that it would be part of everything and how it would work.
Because we have the power to expropriate for a road, do we not?
We'd have to get some legal advice on that.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I would recommend we do that before we take expropriation
Yeah,
measures.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not proposing that, I'm just asking a general question.
Can we get
So they get everybody
more
on with
communication from the park? Impossible creation. I don't want to have the word possible in a motion, but I'd rather just, instead of just talking about the park, but we need to have,
Expansion of a community hub at the park.
yeah.
Of a community hub at the park.
Yeah. Okay, so that was moved by Councillor Brody, second by Councillor Clark.
Should we do that for the first one as well? Community partner discussion on recreation expansion of a community hub at the park.
Yeah. Okay, so read the second motion we haven't voted on yet.
Sounds all the same to me.
So, because we specifically want to talk to P&H specifically, because we know that they're the property owners that will benefit from anything, so we may, if we're going through with roads and stuff, they may say, yeah, we'd be happy to help you out with that project. So that's where we need to talk to them directly. And then we also need to look at what other lands are around there and what other options we have. That's where we would reach out to surrounding property owners as well, because we may need buy-in from all of the property owners for that expansion as well. So, the first motion, if it's okay to amend it with the mover and the seconder, Sue and Mike, that staff reach out to P&H as a community partner for discussion on recreation and expansion of a community hub at the park. And then the second one, which we have not voted on yet, moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Clark, that staff reach out to the surrounding property owners to determine the level of interest in supporting expansion of a community hub at the park.
It sounds the same to me. Both motions
One's
sound
just
the
to
same.
speak directly to P&H, the other one would be to
The property owners.
all the
Sorry.
property owners, because we don't know who all the property owners are, so we
Right.
can't say, so it's just surrounding property
Yep.
owners.
And the first one is to partner, so that's
partner.
more of a
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
discussion. This one is more of a
Permission.
let's purchase or let's do something. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so on the second motion? All those in favor? Or do you have a question?
No.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Yep.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor. Just to get this whole idea, I would really, in my mind, want to know what this property is worth. Are we going to take a dart and throw it in the dartboard? Do we actually spend a very, I mean, it better be very minimal, just an idea of what it's worth, even just from a real estate agent. But I mean, I'm not talking, but to me, to get my mind around going to a big idea, we need to know what the stuff, what our property values are worth right now.
I believe we have some of that.
And maybe we do. If we do, don't spend any money on it.
John.
And I think we're all smart enough to know that, 5 years ago it said it was 500,000, and yeah, it's probably worth. I mean, we can guess it, but I think we all need to know that going forward, right?
Would you like to make that a motion that an appraisal of the municipal building be obtained for council's consideration?
So are you wanting like a full blown?
No, I
No,
don't.
just not
I just want just an idea. I mean, we could get
Letter of
100,000.
opinion, he wants a letter of
200,000.
opinion,
Yeah,
you
letter
don't
of
want to pay
opinion.
for
No.
the big buck stuff, yeah.
No.
And the thing is, these buildings are hard to buy and they're hard to sell.
Yeah.
And you have restrictions with your sleeping bed and all that other stuff, so it depends on the purpose of the purchaser.
And why don't we do that for this building and the municipal garages as well?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea.
Do nothing else when it's all right.
Well,
I'm kidding.
not that it's worth any value. So
The land,
Okay, so that's moved by Councilor Brody, seconded by Councilor McKinnon. That was to
Letter of
agree there.
opinion,
Yeah.
Yeah. Staff be directed to obtain a letter of opinion on the value of the municipal building and Napier Garage and Adelaide Works Garage for council's information and consideration.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, is there anything else you'd like direction on for our first item, which is the facilities and hub creation?
Can I ask a question? I don't know if I'm out of order in this point in time in asking it, but how come I don't see on a revenue line for the fire department? Like when I asked you about a fire call and you go out and you do recovery, like where you get money back from insurance companies or whoever. How come we don't see that?
Because we can't estimate what our revenues are going to be because we don't know how many fire calls are going to be called out.
But you can't use the best guess from your last 3-year average or something, or?
We never know when accidents are going to happen.
Okay. And do we know what it was for last year? Like, is it a line item on your financial
Yes,
statements that I
yeah.
forget if I've seen?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, okay, that's good, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
We don't budget for it because number one, we don't know how many accidents are going to happen. MTO recovery is pretty much guaranteed. Insurance recovery sometimes gets into a battle with getting them to pay us for. We find out people don't have insurance or it's not properly insured or the insurance company just says, no, we've closed that, we don't have enough to pay you, so.
Okay, sorry, I maybe.
This is out of work, but it's also along the same line as the fire department. So also on the revenue side, where is the dollar amount for the rentals? I'm hearing that it's rented often, but I don't see the actual revenue coming into that department.
Yeah, so that goes into association funds. And then you see under revenue, there's donations, is that what it's under?
Yes.
So anyway, so for 2019, I believe the association paid $7,000 to the township for
Equipment.
purchases. The year before that, I believe it was $8,000. So those funds come back. So for rental, it varies from year to year. And yes, last year there was a lot of rentals. I forget the figures now. I'm guessing around $3,000.
Okay, so just to clarify, so you collect revenue
Yes.
but it doesn't come to the township, it goes in the association?
And
And then every single dollar of that gets transferred from the rental to the municipality every year, or just when you need equipment or maintenance or?
yeah, just
Like, is it dollar for dollar swing over, or no?
No.
So if I may, we started, this year, we're getting an actual rental agreement drawn up for the fire hall. So we're going to work on getting that corrected so that the rentals are not flowing through the chief, that they do need to come to the municipality, because we're incurring the liability as well as the expense. So we're going to start seeing those revenues come through the municipality as opposed to as through donation from the fire department.
Yeah, because I mean, it is a municipal building,
Yes.
right? So, okay, yeah, because
Yeah.
the taxpayers might have a problem with that.
Yeah, so we're working on that, and that's going to dovetail into the alcohol policy and the smoking policy to make sure that the rental agreement reflects that, what their requirements are.
Oh, okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay, so we'll move. Kathy, do you need any other direction for the facilities and hub creation?
So, when was council expecting to have that back? So, I know it's gonna delay our budget process and how we move forward, but,
April 1st.
April 1st is not gonna happen, so let's just put
What's
that off the
what was your
table.
question? Sorry.
When
How
would you
soon?
like
When
to
do you
see
want
this,
information?
brought back to you?
Well, but it's not like the 15th or
It's
something.
gonna take a little time to get all this put
Yeah.
together, so.
When is the next budget? The final budget meeting?
We haven't set any
Okay.
final budget meeting.
Okay.
The only deadline we do have to work towards is, as a group, the county we're responsible to have our tax rate set by the middle of June, because we have to input that data into as a group. So we are not on any official timeline. It's just the longer we wait, the less we're going to get accomplished, because we'll be putting tenders and that kind of stuff off. So it's just to get your feedback on when you're expecting to have this back.
Councilor Rhoda?
Mr. Mayor, I'm thinking we better, that stuff, I mean, we have to get our budget done here. I mean,
Well,
for
like your
future
roads
stuff,
and
we have our
whatnot.
stuff in the reserves, and we'll decide to put some money into reserves or whatever. So I think we need to get this done. So I would say we shouldn't hold up our final budget waiting for that.
Like for P&H to get back.
No,
That's
no,
irrelevant.
yeah,
We
that's
need-
gonna be
Because otherwise,
irrelevant.
we're
I
gonna
mean-
have Jeff at every meeting saying, oh,
Oh, yeah.
I've got the budget.
No, that's
Now I
right.
need
We gotta get our
10,000
budget.
for this, I need that, or Aaron might
Yeah.
say the truck blew up, and now I need this, right?
So I would say
I'm
just
not
to
fair
move
to
ahead
you
with
guys
it,
in that
and
position.
Okay, so
we gotta get our budget.
So essentially what I will do then, because this all reflects back into our strat plan, we're going to come back with a revised priority list for the strat plan, which will move the action type into 2020. Doesn't mean that we won't have, but it's for the budget purposes, because realistically at this point in time, if we wait for all of this to happen, we're not going
We're
to
not
get a
gonna
shovel
do
in the
anything in
ground
19
this year
anyway.
anyway. So we would be looking at 2020. So we will come back with the strat plan revised to reflect what the actual is, and then we will put in, we will start to incorporate parts of what needs to be done, but it won't be for a hub or for anything like that this year. So that will also, leading up to our discussion on the capital, that's going to change some of the capital items, like especially for the office. That's going to take out a huge amount too, because we're not going to spend $200,000 on a lift or an elevator until we know what we're going to do with it. So that's going to make a big change in our capital side of it. So there is other capital that needs to be discussed as well, but
Yeah.
essentially that gives us a little bit better as a staff to get our strat plan in place, so then our budget is going to reflect that, which also reflects it into our asset management, because all of those items all have to work together. So we need to make sure that everything's reflective of what council's priorities are. So we've determined today that a hub still is a priority. It's just a B priority, not an A priority, which is this year. So we
Yeah.
move that off until next year. So what now we will have to do is take back this information, sit down and look at our park, because of course we haven't set anything for the budget in the parks yet to know what we're going to do, because it's going to be contingent on this. But there is probably some work that's going to be recommended that we do this year. It just won't flow through the capital, and it won't be as expansive as what we had intended. But we will have to look at some things, such as the pavilions are going to need improvement. We're going to have to do something with the drainage. There is a huge drainage issue there that we'll have to, at the front there. We'll have to do some minimal work to improve accessibility. The parking lot seems a lot lower than any of the it's a trip hazard getting up onto the pad there for the cement pad. So we're gonna have to raise up a little bit, probably improve the parking lot a little bit. So we'll work with the public works manager to get some dollar values and bring those back as some minimum work to be done this
Like
year.
just to
So,
maintain.
Yeah, that's, to me, that's.
just to
what
do
we
some
got.
maintenance.
Yeah.
Probably do a little more extensive tree removal this year just to kind of thin it out and
The
make it
fence
more
in the
appealing.
front.
The fence in the front, all that kind of
Yeah.
little bit of more cosmetic work this year. We'll hold off on doing anything with playground equipment except for removing the tubular structures at the front. That really needs to come out. It's not CSA approved, it's not safe, so we'll look at getting that removed and probably doing some work on the base of the playground equipment, which hasn't probably been touched since it went down, so it probably needs to be sifted and cleaned and checked for hazardous materials and that kind of stuff, and then either a little bit replaced or fitted up. And also this year we'll probably look at new tubing or some sort of a protective system around that, like standard in the outfield. It's pretty old and I don't think it's gonna one good whack by a player and it's gonna be cracked. So it can only stand so long. So just some more general maintenance. If there's anything else that you know of that for the park, if you wanted to bring it forward, then we can look at what we can do. But I do know we need to get that drainage fixed and we need to improve the parking lot and make sure that we've got a little better appearance-wise for the park for this year.
And we should get that moving because, we're gonna be April 1st,
Yes.
by June, you're starting to get a lot of activity.
Activity,
So
yeah.
that should be the May, in my mind, some May. That fits into your time frame, no problem. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The sooner we can make a plan,
Yeah.
then the better. We'll get her going.
Perfect. Okay. So moving on to the capital projects.
So, no, just get myself ready this year.
I have a drainage question
For the department.
I asked, what's his name, Jim, is that his name? And he said that would be. So I don't know when you want me to ask.
Is it a budget question or just a general
Well, it
question?
would be a budget because it wouldn't be in here. So I noticed you have, not to put you on the spot, Jeff, but when you're talking about the different roads and not only the improvement but the maintenance piece to it. So, for example, on the Havelock Street, the back corner where it ends before the track, there's the drainage issue there, and I've been told by people, well, yeah, that's just because they didn't do it right and whatever. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but has there been any talk or a plan in place to fix that corner? So, because you'd probably have to rip up a little section of the road or like, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know the degree to which the problem, but there's 3 or 4 residents that are pretty excited in that corner.
Through the mayor, to be honest, I'm not aware of a problem there.
Okay.
So
Then you will be aware,
So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, well-
I'm be more than happy. Look, I'm a little bit nervous just because of all the money that got spent in Kerwood already with the sidewalks and the resurfacing. That the drainage should be adequate there. I'm hoping, but I'm not aware of a drainage
That was before your
problem.
time, I think.
So I can't comment
Yeah.
on that.
I've suggested
general-
to the ratepayer that the next time there's severe rain to call me, and then I will reach out to the drainage person here so that they can physically see what the issue is, because if someone's front lawn and it's coming in the front door, which I find hard to believe, but I would like to see that, to see what the actual issue is.
Yeah, there is, and again, there was one issue with some drainage that I believe we've corrected with an additional drainage that we put in the last year.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not aware of anything that's outstanding. So
Okay.
if there's something there, I'd be more than happy to continue to look into something there.
Okay.
And just a general comment, there is lots of little things in the municipality that can be added to a list that I don't include to council, such
Okay.
as ditching and drainage. just because of, you know, the list can be this long.
Right.
Just regular
So
maintenance.
then in your budget section, that's sort of in there, like you in the back of your mind, there always is little maintenance,
Yeah,
it's tweaked,
in the
it doesn't
maintenance
cover just
and-
what you've mentioned here, for example.
No,
Okay.
not even, so there will always be some drainage issues, there will be always, such a spring breakup, we'll have to go and patch the roads. There's always that, and that's what's built in the maintenance side of things,
Perfect.
whereas the capital side of things are the big projects.
Okay,
So
thank you.
the direction is, yes, we're gonna do that, or no, we're not going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Kath, want to continue on
So,
with that?
yeah, so if
Yeah.
I may just add to, we have, the drains that you see listed out on Jeff's, the specific drains are actually municipal drains that we are responsible for, and we do repair on behalf of the ratepayers. Some of those, in town drains, and they're part of the road work system as opposed to a municipal drain. So they're included in roadside maintenance as well as hard surface maintenance, depending on when the repairs are done and what the corrections are. So Jeff allocates those under his budget. You'll never not see a specific line item for those ones, but those ones that are listed as a specific drain are actual drains that are ratepayer driven requests to be improved.
Okay, thank you.
We're doing capital projects.
Okay, so capital projects. So we still have, now that we had this announcement last week of the two additions of funding, being the one-time amount of $308,000, we will need some direction from council on where you would like to see that $308,000 applied, whether you want to see it applied to roads, or would you like to see it applied in several different avenues? Would you like it set aside for special project of some sort, like we are talking about major dollars that are going to be spent investing in our community? Do you want to see it? So we will need direction from council for that $308,000 so that we can provide to the ministry when they requested what we did with it for our modernization. Staff can also work on some ideas that would fit under a modernization criteria. We can come up with some options for you as well, but it is something that we will need direction from council on where that's going to go, whether it's going to be parked and reserves for a new building or what the avenue you would like to take with that.
Once you park it in the reserves, is it then earmarked only for that category, or can it be changed later?
It can be changed. It's council's reserves are set up at council's discretion, and you pass a resolution on how you want that money allocated. Some of it is very prescriptive, like the AMO gas tax fund. We have to put it in a separate reserve. We can't lump it in with another project. But when it's money that has no strings attached, you can council can allocate it to wherever they want.
So we could allocate it to the hub, and then we could later say, oh no, we're gonna buy a fire truck.
Correct.
So we're not gonna get, we got half a fire truck or
Yes.
whatever for that, but.
Yeah, and that's why we were specific. Some of the reserves are more broad. It says capital purposes. Doesn't mean that's all there just to spend on capital. There are some specific allocations within there. It's just the former process didn't have it allocated out. We do have a specific account now where you'll see computer reserves. That's for specific replacement of our server, so that when we need to do it, it's a gradual upkeep. It's not a spike in our budgets. So it's those kind of things. So. And then we're working on integrating this into our capital management plan, but Jeff did a capital budget forecast I left on your desk today for you to take with you and to look at. One thing that Jeff and I have discussed is the tandem truck replacement scheduled for the 2019 budget, the $400,000. Realistically, by the time we get the tender out and get it ordered, we're not going to see that purchase until 2020. So we're likely going to order it in 2019 with the capital to be expended in 2020. So that's going to help our capital budget somewhat. So we can take that $400,000 out of 2019 capital budget. It is just putting it off. So when you put it off one more year, you're going to bump everything else up. So we'll see a shift in this to allocate it to when it's actually going to be. It's going to be a 2020 replacement as opposed to 2019 replacement, as we haven't incurred any liability if we order it at that point in time.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of comments on the current asset plan. That, again, is based on a 12-year replacement on the tandems, which was the previous Eldon's design. So I'm going basically what the past has been. So this, and I said to Kathy, everything you see here, we're going to review the assets this year. That's part of our plan this year. So whether the number of years of each piece of equipment gets longer or shorter, that's open to discussion later this year. But this is based on past. And the other thing I'll just point out is I've tried to budget so there's no spikes. Okay, so you'll see that it's roughly, so there's no large spikes one year and nothing the next. And there's lots of options in the future. So, and again, this is not meant for budgets. There still have to be, this is just a rough estimate of value. That this obviously could be less or could be more as we move for each year down the road. Just a couple of comments.
Okay, Councilor Doherty?
Yeah, it's just a comment here, Mr. Mayor. Just, you know, if we push this replacing the 05 back to 20, I mean, to me, all of a sudden you've got a 09 and a 10 that's, you know, the next year. But to me, they're probably not that dire need of those being replaced. They can be pushed back.
Like even if you could stagger them a year or two so that you don't have bang, bang, bang.
Yeah,
all at once,
we can't throw a grader
squeeze a bit more life
and then
out
have
of
2 or 3 trucks all within a couple of years. I mean,
yeah,
just a comment. I think
I
you're
agree that that can be looked at definitely, and we talked about a 14-year plan for the tandems. The only thing is you just increase the maintenance budget a little bit. So, and the other thing is there is other options out there when we start talking about some of this other infrastructure. So don't get too focused on 5 years, but just have a general idea that this is what's coming to make decisions on. So.
Yep. Councilor Clark?
Through the mayor to Jeff, so the last time we spoke, you were gonna get quotes for the mower, so did you get any in yet?
They're out right now.
Oh, they're out right now, you haven't got any yet, okay.
They're out right now.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and one.
I was just curious if they came in lower
sorry.
or whatever.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, another comment, you'll notice that Innendale is included on this.
Okay.
Again, that is not meant to make any decision on Innendale, that's up to council to continue, and Scott Schmier as well. That even though that was from the past, that each year then gets decided on whether we continue with this plan.
Well, because you're looking 5, 6, 7 years
Yes.
out. Yeah.
And that was what the previous plan saw. So
and number one, we have to approach the other township on that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah, so don't this isn't written in stone. It's just a general look.
Yep.
And if I may add, our asset management plan has to be in place by July 1st this year. So these questions will all be coming to council for review and for discussion on whether we want to maintain a 12 years life cycle for vehicles, or it's going to be expanded to 2014 or to 14 years. And then it also, our asset management plan also now has to, it used to only be for the capital replacement. Now you're legislated to also include what's it going to cost you to maintain it in those years as well, so that you're not just thinking about, okay, in 10 years I have to spend $400,000, that's $40,000 a year. You also have to take into consideration it's going to cost, you have to raise $40,000 a year, but you're also going to be having an incremental cost to maintain that equipment until you replace it. So this asset management plan will also reflect that as well. So if you go to a 14-year, how does that impact your budget? Because you're going to have those increase in costs. And the same with roads. As long as you improve a road, you're going to have your ongoing maintenance for a gravel road. When you have a hard surface road, you're going to see that as it gets older, you're going to have more repairs being done, and then it's how long can you wait until you have to do that? And is it costing you more? So it's working its way through the system. It's just getting those questions all put together and coming to council with some direction so we can finalize our service levels so that can be reflected in our asset management plan.
Yeah, because you have to have an idea what's coming forward. Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Kathy. Kathy, do we have any idea when the infrastructure grant applications have to be in?
May. We have 8 weeks.
Oh,
There's 8 weeks to get them in.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. And we have the
So we
information,
should
so we're
be-
just going through to see what is eligible, what's ineligible, and what we would be able to qualify for.
Good. Yeah, because we gotta be at the table, or you don't get anything, right? So,
Yes, yeah. Yes, so that information will come back to council once we've had a chance to go through it and figure out what would be eligible for it.
Jeff, what is Bridge 10?
Bridge 10? Bridge 10 is actually the Napier Bridge. Is the bridge in Napier.
A lot of money.
$1 million to replace that? I might make them drive around. Holy smokes.
And again, don't, just to repeat that figure, we've done no preliminary study on the soils. If we had to rebuild the bridge that's there, whether we can, the problem that we're having there right now is the abutments that the existing bridge is on are showing signs of deteriorating.
Oh, right.
So, again, that figure was used to make sure that a ballpark figure, that it could be less, it could be more, depending on further investigation.
You don't know what you're dealing
No,
with.
exactly,
Okay.
that's looking 5 years down the road, so.
Yep, go ahead.
Another question. So sidewalks have been talked about in previous councils, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Has there ever been, like, is there a number, like, has there been a study already with an estimate or anything, or was it just plain rough?
It was very preliminary numbers, and I don't even know where the information was
Okay.
gathered from, whether it was just based on what we did in Kerwood, which wasn't exactly a wholesome approach to them. So,
Yeah.
no, sidewalks have not been explored
I just
to
didn't
any
wanna
great detail.
redo another, if there
Yes.
was one in the past, that's all.
No,
I was-
and that's why we had the money in the budget for a study, which should have been actually an engineering report, so that we can actually find out what is it gonna cost to put sidewalks in. Because we don't know what obstacles, we can physically see the above ground obstacles, we don't know what's in the ground and what road easements might be required and that kind of information, so.
And to that end, if I may, after meeting with some of the people in what I'll call the Healy subdivision for Blackwood and walking the area, you know, they're not asking for it in the main subdivision part.
No.
And they're not asking for it on both sides of the highway. We're just saying, even if you can get us just to the corner, originally, some only wanted, like, from here to the front door, just to get from the Seasons into the entry. So even if that's like stage one, that's pretty minor. And then some of the walkers that are down a little farther and the people on the Pike Side Road, they're not asking for it even to be on the Pike Side, they just want it down to the corner when their kids wait for the bus. They're not standing on the snowbank trying not to get hit. So these people are not asking for the moon. 81 Highway might be a different story. You know,
Which might be very.
you know, you've got ditches there, you might have to expropriate, like you might have to, like that's a bigger conversation. Whereas that area there, they're not asking for the moon, they're just asking for a little strip.
Could be a start.
Then that could be a start, yeah, and I don't see that on here anywhere, do I? Yes, I do. No, sidewalk, no.
Yes, Councilor McKinnon?
And to that point, most of the asks are for along a county road, right?
Mhm.
Should we have Chris Trainey come and speak to him about how receptive they are and
What their requirements
Yeah.
would be.
Kathy, have you spoken with Chris yet?
I haven't spoke with Chris, he was away last week. However, sidewalks aren't a county concern.
no?
They
Right,
would
but they'll
only
tell you what
say,
your setback has to be.
Yeah.
yeah, and that would be
Yes.
their input, would be where the
Yes.
setback is. We have
That's what we
made
need.
preliminary contact with them, in regards to what their plans are for the two areas along Napperton and along, Center Road, just to see if they're planning on doing any road work, because there's no point in us putting sidewalks in and then come along a year later and do anything. But we would dovetail in with their project. Again, we haven't followed up with him, he has been away for a little bit, so.
Councilor Clark?
So to that point, and I'm not saying we need this yet or whatever, but we've all talked about the traffic studies that have been done and the amount of traffic that goes up that Pike Side Road on a daily basis. So if, this is just a question, if we ever, would we be the ones that would have to be responsible for a stoplight if it ever came to that, or is that a county? And if it is us, do we, that's maybe should be on the back of our thing?
The mayor, so the stoplight will be traffic control in the intersection, so that will be a county.
That would
is a
be county on
yes.
them,
So
okay.
what you kind of use as a judgment is the boulevard is our responsibility. So sidewalks, street lighting, that sort of thing falls under our
Municipal?
requirement, whereas their intersection, so if they put in a street light, it's for the safety of the intersection. They don't put the street light in for the neighborhood.
Okay,
But yeah, so if there was a street light or a stoplight deemed to go in, that would definitely be
on them,
on
okay,
them.
okay.
But a point that no matter whether it's a county road or our road, sidewalks are our
Are on us,
our
okay, okay,
responsibility.
just to clarify.
And one further comment, I was talking to the county because there's a push on bicycle lanes. And it's the new thing coming through. So I asked about Center, and Center has already been so-called looked at a couple of years ago. It's supposed to have already been paved.
So you mean 81 highway?
Or 81
Yeah,
highway center,
okay.
yeah. So at this point, they're not expanding bike lanes on 81 because of that project's been already completed. Because I thought maybe we could do sidewalks and bike lanes and a boulevard together. But at this point, Center's been so-called finished. It's waiting
their
for
mind,
payment.
yeah,
In their
okay.
mind, it's already been finished, so it's not going to, at this point, be changed for the bike lanes, so.
And as for the construction that's coming up on Napperton, Center Road, or 2nd Street, so Center Road will be finished with, hopefully the paving will happen this year. There's legal battle that's kind of going on. And then Napperton, I don't think there's anything planned for the next couple of years, but 2nd Street, they're planning on doing some work on the east end, which is also an Adelaide Metcalfe, so that's an area that we should be looking at for sidewalks as well, because that is a residential area and then leading over to the Butcher Creek area. So that's something that should be on our radar as well, because
Well, especially if they're in that area at the same
they're in that
time,
area
then
next year.
that makes sense, that's
Yeah.
good to know.
So that's near the Bluegrass
Yeah,
subdivision?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I made this comment, Mr. Mayor, too. If we plan to look at sidewalks, it is nice to have a vision, an engineering, because if we do more, if there is more growth on Center, then hopefully they're designing the growth to meet sidewalks.
Yes.
Because there's been some growth there that hasn't looked at the addition of sidewalks, that's going to be
Well, it should be on
We
them,
need
the
to,
onus
we
should
need
be
to
on
have
them.
that in place then.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they have to put them in, but there should be some thought for future sidewalk.
Maybe we should almost have them, if they have to put their little structure in. You know what I mean? I think.
No, because if there's a
Yeah.
drainage issue or something, I mean,
Yeah.
it's huge,
It's
right?
definitely
Like, why
drainage.
should that be on us? They're
We
the
need to have
developer.
that, you know.
Well, and that's what he's saying, and Jeff, I think Jeff
I like
Denby's
that.
on side with that too,
Yeah.
for site plan control.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're beyond that with
Yes.
the Grogas subdivision and some other
And Buttery
developments.
as well.
Unfortunately, that council of the day decided not to put that as a requirement of the subdivision agreement, so, yeah. Okay, with that, I think we're going to have a motion to break for lunch, and then when we return at approximately 12:30, it'll be the closed session. So motion for that,
So moved.
moved by Councilor McKinnon, seconded by Councilor Brody. All those in favor, opposed, and carried. A motion to reconvene council, okay, Councilor Brody and Councilor McKinnon, all those in favor, opposed and carried, so that's at 12:38. And now we need a motion to go into closed session under section 239 to F, B, D, and, yeah, B and D. Okay,
So moved.
okay, moved by Councilor McKinnon, seconded by Councilor Brody, all those in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Okay, so we just resumed from our closed session. It's 3:54, and we just have one item for the rise and report.
Resolve that staff be directed to proceed as discussed in closed session.
Okay, mover and seconder for that. Councilor Clark and Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, so looking at the time, we do have some more of the budget to look at, but I'm not sure if council's wanting to continue on, considering we did start at 10 a.m. And I know that Councilor McKinnon has to go in the next 5 minutes. So,
And what are the issues you need to still address? You need to do donations,
So we have donations, council remuneration,
and what else?
we will have to discuss the 308,000 we received
Oh, where we
from,
wanna allocate
where we
that.
want to allocate that.
The double gas tax.
and then anything else
That
you want to
doesn't,
talk
the
about?
double gas tax, doesn't it automatically filter to the roads, or that was a
It
conscious
doesn't
decision?
automatically filter to the roads.
Oh,
No,
okay.
there was a couple of years there where we
Because
put
you
it
knew
in
you were doing
reserve,
that, huh?
and then we were ready to pave. We went ahead and used it to offset the cost of the entire paving project, as opposed to using it up every year.
And it's like 90 to 100 grand, kind
Yes.
of? Okay.
It'll be 180 this year.
For this year? Oh, for,
Because it's
it's
double.
two, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor, when's Deputy Mayor return?
Sabrina Hendricks will be back on the
Third.
April 15th meeting, right?
Yes, she is away
Oh, but
until
just
the
in
first.
general, you
Yeah, just to set the
Yeah,
next.
she is away
Oh,
until
for the
April the
next budget
1st. I
meeting.
believe she's back on the 2nd.
So could we have a meeting that week?
I have the auditors here the 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
So they're
So
using
I will,
this room.
yes, so they will
But
be
we could
here.
go downstairs. Oh, there's no.
Yeah, there's no
no, she
camera,
can't.
and it's hard for me to be up here
Yeah, no, she
helping
can't
them
be,
and being,
yeah.
yeah, it's too far,
So
so.
we have.
Let me
So
get my
what's the
calendar.
Friday? Is that the 5th? You said they're here, 3rd,
Yes,
4th, and 5th.
3rd, 4th, and 5th.
What about the 2nd?
That's Tuesday.
That's a Middlesex County Council meeting.
Oh, okay.
I don't
And
know
that's
about how
also,
enough.
I think I
something
have a
else.
meeting that
Tomorrow we
day.
have to get agenda ready, so I have
So the
6
week
reports.
of the 8th to the 12th
mhm.
seems free for everybody.
Okay.
The 10th is emergency management.
And the 10th, I'm at your teeny tiny summit in Dorchester.
I'm thinking earlier, anyways, like 8th, 9th, just in case.
The 8th, I have a local council visit for Thames Center, and that's at 1. And then on the Tuesdays, in the morning, I have an EMS Authority Board meeting and then County Council.
It's the afternoon, county council, and
And the EMS
Could we-
Authority Board is in the morning.
Could we do just a morning on the 8th session till?
I already have a meeting that morning.
Yeah, Jennifer and I already have a meeting with, a development meeting here, so.
It would have to be the 11th or the 12th, then, right?
what about if we had the meeting on the morning of the 15th, and then had an evening session as well, or like 1 o'clock to 5, and then 7 until 9?
Well, I'm thinking you need just a little more time to do it, like if you added the 11th or the 12th.
I like the 11th.
11th, and some, if we had a long one on the 11th and we still don't, maybe we should almost have a short on the 15th. I don't know. Like I know myself. I don't
Well,
want to
you're
get
gonna
into
be
May.
running out of time soon,
Yeah, I'm
right?
gonna get running out of time. I don't want to get
Because of
myself
your
caught.
business,
And then you got Easter coming up after that, so,
Yeah.
because you guys are likely closed the Friday and the Monday, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
those are normal days.
So the 11th work? Or
I like the 11th.
11th is a Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah, I'll
Mary
just
Ann's
make
back,
sure,
right?
Yeah,
Mary
and
Ann
I'll
will be
just make
back.
sure I work either the Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay.
I'm gone then, so that's fine with me.
Daytime?
So you're not around then?
On the 11th?
No. I'm on my jet plane, yeah.
There you go. I can't keep track of all you.
But Mary Ann will be here, so you'll have enough. Don't worry about me.
Well,
So you're gone from then, okay.
check my
Just
schedule.
go with the 11th.
April the 11th in the morning, 10?
Because nothing. You said nothing worked the week before then at all.
So the week
You
before.
had-
I might actually fly out at night that night.
Well, we have the auditors here,
So
so
we're good for that.
it's,
Yeah.
they're pretty intense when they come in. They
Yeah.
take up all the tables and I pull out tons of paperwork, so.
The only way it would, yeah, but then they'll have all the, I was thinking you could do it in the evening, but then there's still gonna be stuff out of the
Yeah,
tables.
once they set up, they move everything around to accommodate them. So.
What about Monday the 1st? How does that work for everyone? Tuesday?
To have everything ready.
That's too soon.
When's our next
I don't
council?
think, I honestly
First.
don't think
That's
how,
first,
because
yeah.
we have budget, we have to get agenda ready tomorrow and then.
Yeah, and I have a meeting in the afternoon on Monday and.
What about, so,
What about a night on the 8th or when do you leave? You said Sue.
I either leave at 8:30 in the morning or 8:30 at night on the 11th, I forget.
so the 8th in the evening could work.
Sounds good to me.
Problem is I got insurance stuff. Yeah, maybe it won't work for me.
Nine?
No.
What about the ninth and the evening?
The 9th in the day, I'm no good. 9th in the evening could work.
5 o'clock?
Is Mary Ann around?
She'll be back, I think.
She'll be back on the second, Kathy thought.
So that could work. But then you've got to get ready. Oh no, you don't have a meeting on the 8th.
No.
You got on the
The
1st
8th I
and the
don't have a
15th.
meeting.
Okay. So do you want to do that? Or is-
Sure, let's.
So you've got council.
That's
don't you?
fine. I can sit through a bunch of meetings.
Well, I've still got one more tonight at 7, so feel my pain.
So like, but what? Not 5 o'clock. What you mentioned? What? Let's go with
7
like
o'clock?
6 or 7 would be much better.
Then
I
it's
need
too
some
tight.
time in between.
6
Too
o'clock.
tight.
So that's
Just
What day
6
is
o-
it? The 9th, right?
9th?
Or the
Yeah.
8th?
Whatever time you can.
Which
6?
day?
The
9.
9th.
9.
At 6.
Because you said the 8th was no good.
Yeah.
6.
Just remind me.
I hope
After
everyone
next
viewing
week.
on YouTube enjoyed us trying to figure out a date. So we need a motion then that the next budget meeting will be April 9th at 6 p.m. here.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. And a motion to adjourn at 4:02. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? Opposed and that's carried.